I was released from baseball. I received a letter in the mail with a check mark saying I was released. Absolutely. At the beginning, the first move, the first employee is the hardest because you're starting your business by yourself. And then he comes to me for financial advice. I have one question. Am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? Okay. Take my finances and make me. That talks about winning all the time and doesn't do anything about it is not a good coach. Most people that are successful have some sort of a problem.
And thanks for tuning in today. This week's episode is brought to you in conjunction with Upskilled and their mini MBA. If you want to get the skills and knowledge to help move you forward without all of the big expense, then this mini MBA with Upskilled is the right way to go. Follow the link in the show notes and you can get $500 off. Well, Jack, thanks for joining me on the show today. It's great to have you on. Looking forward to hearing a bit more about, well, your career and the transitions that you have gone through and sort of some of the things you did to navigate it as well. So thanks for joining me today.
It's my pleasure to be with you today, Ryan.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna jump in because you've got quite a fascinating background. But for those who don't know who Jack Oujo is, just give us that 30-second brief. Who are you and what are you up to nowadays?
Sure. The story in my book, Too Smart to Be an Umpire, is I graduated from Seton Hall University in New Jersey with an accounting degree, and I officiated my way through college. I played baseball in high school and a little bit my freshman year in college, but I needed money, so I was encouraged to try officiating, and I became pretty good at it. And when I graduated from college, not wanting to have any regrets, I went to a professional umpire school in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they took me into the minor leagues. And what I thought would be a very short experience in the minor leagues turned out to be 8 years. And by the time I was 30, I ended up getting released. They had a policy: if you had 3 years in AAA and the major leagues didn't take you, they got rid of you. In retrospect, I got to AAA too quick, probably, because there's people that went to the major leagues that I beat to lower levels of the minor leagues. And I found myself with a pregnant wife, no money, and having to start a career. And I ended up creating a multi-million-dollar financial advisory business that I just sold to two of our employees and achieved success in the business world that I could have never imagined.
Well, that is a great summation of the story. So thanks for that. It really does paint a picture and sort of signposts I'm going to have to cut down the 100 questions I've got or else we just won't get through it. But it certainly gives me a good, I'm going to say ballpark in which to begin. And I'm going to start with Umpire School. What is Umpire School?
Sure. Well, it's a way, if you think about Major League Baseball, they have to develop officials. So the Umpire School is more of a tryout camp. People came there with some level of experience, generally speaking, not always, but in most cases they did. And Umpire School was a 5-week camp that started at 9 o'clock in the morning with classroom study. And then they took you out onto the field and they put you through various situations that take place in baseball games. They put you in batting cages to see your judgment on calling balls and strikes. And when I went, there was about 350 people that went, and they ended up hiring 13 people out of 350 people. So you had to be at the very top of the class. And then as people quit or got fired during the season, they might have another 15 or so openings. So by the end of the first season, there was probably 30 people that were taken into the minor leagues. And once you got into the minor leagues in baseball, and the way it works is there's low A, high A, double A, triple A, then the major leagues. At the end of every season, about 50 to 70% of all the umpires were fired at the end of the season because they keep rotating people in. And it was like a game of survivor. You know, at the end of every year, you're happy not to be fired, and it's cutthroat, it's rigorous, and it's not easy. It's not as easy as people might think it is. It's a funnel you're trying to get to the major leagues, and it's a very narrow funnel at the end.
Yeah, it is. So tell me then, umpires. When I think of baseball, I there are umpires all around the field, right? So I think
Yes.
there's more than just one. So when we're talking about umpire here, aren't you a team?
You are a team, but there's one umpire behind home plate calling balls and strikes. That's where the value is, if you will. That's obviously the most important position. In the minor leagues, there are only two umpires. In the major leagues, there's four, and there's six during major events like the World Series, if you will. So you rotate around. If you have home plate one day, the next day you're at third base, then second base, then first base, and you switch around. Obviously, the role of an umpire today is a lot less important because of technology. I mean, if you could tell if a pitch is a ball or a strike with your phone, or safer out with your phone, the human being is less valuable. Artificial intelligence, in my view, will take over a great deal of that job as time goes on. In my view,
Okay. I mean, it's individual is what I'm getting. So you might be part of a team, but for you as an umpire, you're trying to get yourself on that home plate. So, but for you, you became an umpire. I'm going to say not through design, but as a way to fund yourself through university or through your college education, right?
yes, it was a part time job. When I was growing up, I lived next. My next door neighbor was a guy named Ed Sanicky, and he played for the Philadelphia Phillies and hit three home runs in 20 major league at bats. And he was an umpire as a hobby, and he encouraged me, "You ought to try umpiring." Because I was a catcher when I was a baseball player, which is also right behind the plate. He goes, "You'd be very good at it." And I thought he was crazy. I'm like, "You're going to get yelled at all the time." And he goes, "Well, you can make good money at it. It's better than most part time jobs." So I took his advice and I tried it, and I ended up liking it very much. And I found that when I was in college, I was getting all these top games. I was working state finals. I kept getting promoted, and I was having fun. And so I had an accounting degree, and I figured I'm young. If I don't make it, I can still fall back on my accounting degree, which I did. And there's plenty of time in life to chase your dreams when you're in your 20s. Plus, I got to see a lot of the United States. I got to travel. When I was a kid, I never traveled, and we never traveled anywhere. We had no money. So that's why I went into it, and it was fun. People think you're just getting yelled at and abused. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot.
Well, you know what intrigues me really is because my one of my boys, he is a referee in rugby. And so I see him going out, so he still plays, but I, you know, can realistically see him and there's other sort of grown adults who are doing refereeing and they see it as a part-time pathway, but for a few, they see this as a full-time opportunity. So for you, as you came through with that degree and you thought, let me give this a chance. Tell me, what did you think being a full-time umpire could be? Like, where did you? I'm assuming you wanted to get into the major league.
Yeah, you obviously want to get to the major leagues. There's no money. There's poverty, if you will, by being a part time official, if you will, or certainly in the minor leagues in American sports. The players, the umpires are in poverty. There's no money. So you're hoping it's not a very long road in the minor leagues, so you can do something else with your life. At best, it's a part-time job. In Major League Baseball, the Major League umpires are paid anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 a year. I know how much money they make because when I became an accountant later, they all became a third of them became clients of mine. So I played golf with three retired major league umpires the other day. So I'm still friends with a lot of people, and they also receive a very good pension, and so it's a very good full time job. But it's no place. The minor leagues is no place to be over the
Hmm.
longer term.
Hi, I want to take this moment to thank Upskilled and their mini MBA for sponsoring this week's session. One of the great things about their mini MBA is it allows you to gain the skills and knowledge to help propel you that little bit further forward. It gets you understanding the vocabulary in the room and also gives you some of those skills to navigate the corporate career, the government career, or indeed stepping into not for profit. So, big thanks for Upskilled and the Mini MBA for sponsoring this week. And hey, check it out. Link in the show notes. You can get $500 off. So when you talk about being too smart to be an umpire, what do you talk through that in the book. Sort of break that down for me a little bit more.
Well, when I wrote the book, all my files were saved as Plan B. It was always called Plan B, transitioning from sports to business. And I told a story in the book where I was getting evaluated when I was in AAA by a fellow named Dick Butler, who used to be the supervisor of umpires for the American League. And we had a game at the old Rosenblatt Stadium in Omaha, Nebraska, where the College World Series was played. And when the game was over, he took our crew out to dinner. And I said, Mr. Butler, I've been in the minor leagues for 8 years now. Wanted to know if I could get an evaluation and if you could tell me where I stand with you guys. And he said, Jack, I think you call a really good ball game. He goes, I only disagreed with one pitch. To be honest with you, I think you're too smart to be an umpire. And I was like, too smart? I'm too smart. That's a defect. And he goes, yeah, I think you're too smart to be an umpire. I think you'd be better off in the business world. I think you can make a lot of money in the business world. You have a good head on your shoulders. So that's where the title comes from. It came reluctantly from me. The media people and the publishers were like, that's the title for the book when I saw that chapter. And I'm like, okay. But I certainly don't feel like I'm too smart to be an umpire. But I guess that resonates throughout the book, if you will,
Yeah.
about being able to go into business and do well in business.
Yeah, and I was going to say, so when you look back at that, because it's something I've heard before from many athletes who are perhaps studious, academic, not just driven by gut, but plan things out and work them out differently to what an athlete would do. It's funny because I would have thought as an umpire, a referee, that kind of analytical mindset would have been something that would have supported you even better.
It does, but in baseball, you need street smarts, and it can be really rough in professional sports. Maybe that was his way of thinking that I wasn't tough enough. I certainly feel like I was tough enough. I had a very thick skin, and it served me very well in the business world. But I think smarts mean a lot, especially in our sport, baseball. I write in Too Smart to Be an Umpire how I think in baseball most games are lost, not won. And a lot of times it's through stupid mistakes. It's through not knowing how to keep your head and control the big inning. And if you look at a baseball game, most teams that lose a game, it's usually because of one bad inning. There's golfers that lose tournaments because of one bad hole. And facing adversity in a game, in soccer, if you go down a goal or two and being able to keep your head and being able to press on and perhaps come back and win the game means an awful lot. So I think handling adversity, handling negative events is a pretty big freaking deal. And for an official, if you make a bad call in a game and you wilt under that pressure, you're going to be pretty bad for the rest of the game. So I think having a good mind to recover from adversity is a pretty important thing, actually.
I definitely agree. And I think, we're going to get onto that with yourself in terms of what I guess that transition was like for you, because it wasn't a timed transition. It wasn't one where you had said, okay, I'm done. Absolutely fantastic. I've achieved everything I want to do. So talk to me a bit about coming into that transition period and what was going through your mind.
Sure. When I was released from baseball, I received a letter in the mail with a check mark saying I was released around November of 1988, some time ago. And when I received the letter, I was devastated. I remember being in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, and thinking I could spend the rest of my life feeling sorry for myself, or I could try to find a new path. And the next day, my wife and I sat down and we created a written plan of attack of how we were going to deal with this. And I was greatly influenced by a book I read by former Chrysler chairman Lee Iacocca. And he said for people to be successful in the business world, you need to get as much education as possible and then do something with that education. So, not knowing where things would lead, I ended up getting hired by Ernst and Young, EY, now rebranded. They hired me. I think they did the audit for Major League Baseball, which helped me get a foot in the door there. And the 4-year plan included becoming a certified public accountant, certified financial planner, getting a master's degree in taxation, and getting various licenses in securities and insurance. And I just spent every day working, every weekend getting more professional credentials, which I achieved in 3.5 years. That goal was achieved in 3.5 years. And then with a partner, we opened up a wealth management and accounting business, again, still with no money and greater in debt because of the student loans. We financed everything with credit cards, quite frankly. We took cash advances on credit cards. Not something I'd advise other people, but I did it. And we did the math on it, though. We had a written business plan that if we could pick up 1 or 2 clients a month for 2 years, we would be okay. And we figured if we can't get 1 or 2 clients a month for 2 years, we didn't deserve to be in business anyway. And it was a slow roll, but after about 5 years, we were making really good money and we had a really good business. And having a supportive spouse meant everything. I think a lot of times athletes may feel an entitlement. You've done a certain amount of time in sports, and when you transition into business, I'm going to start at the top and not do the groundwork. And I took the opposite approach. So I'm going to go back to zero, start over, and really try to build myself up, take a lot of time, with the feeling that if I was meeting a client, I was going to get their business because I deserved it for all the hard work I did with the education and credentials I got, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense. What I'm curious about is the creation of a plan in the first place. Now, I know you're backed with a degree, but you've just come from receiving a letter, which I know is more normal back then. It's kind of what I remember receiving, things like that. But you received this letter to say you are no longer required. How do you go from receiving that
Right.
letter? I'm assuming you felt a bit crushed, but to go from that to then, okay, darling, let's write a plan.
Well, it was almost out of anger. It was there's hurt and then there's anger, and we were like, we always knew this day could come. So it's in the back of your mind. Any athlete knows they're going to retire or get released someday. So you know that it may come. And I go, let's sit down and attack this. The heck, screw these people. We're going to show them that they made a mistake and we're going to make something of our life. We're like, let's go get him, if you will. The coach that yells at his team and says, "We'll show you, coach. We'll go out and win the game in spite of you yelling at us, if you will." So it was like that, and it really was just, let's get. We realized I needed a lot more education to be at the top of my field, and that was as an accountant. The wealth management business, which is what we ended up making our money in, I didn't even know was a business. Okay, when we started this plan, it was just to throw as much education out there, become as qualified as possible in whatever. Okay, and let's see where the chips go with that. So that's what we did. Let's get educated. Let's get smart, and
Yeah.
let's see if that will lead to something. And it did.
And what I do like about the plan, I'm not sure if you were aware of it at the time, but you talk about one, it's like this 5-year journey, but it was broken down quite simply with 1 or 2 clients per month for you, and knowing that if you did that, you would achieve success. Along that journey, I mean, how was that? Was it boom, two, 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 and off we go?
Well, at the beginning, when we started, again, everything was in writing with math. Okay. So we did the math on what our goals would be, and we went through different scenarios. And that's what I would advise almost anybody to do with any aspect, especially if you're worried about your finances. Put it in writing and see where things are, and how positive and negative scenarios could go. Once we started picking up clients, the first goal after that within our business was to create raving fans, provide our clients with overwhelming levels of service so that these raving fans, if you will, could spread the word and bring us in a lot more business. and that ended up working out well. Like I consider myself a nerdy accountant, if you will, not a great salesman, even though I became a great salesman. I became a great salesman because all these clients out there were bringing me all the business that I needed. So it was A, get the clients, and then B, more importantly, much more importantly, keep those clients through overwhelming service, and then spread out these tentacles, if you will, to grow the business. And it ended up being a lot of fun. We had a great career. I was partner. I had a partner for 10 years, and then we split just because we didn't need each other. It was very amicable. But in the beginning, it was important because we shared expenses and things along those lines. And then he was able to do his own thing, and so was I, because we had a couple different visions on where to take the business. But we had a lot of fun, and we helped a lot of people along the way. So I can't think of a better business where you're helping people and making a lot of money. So it was a really good run, you know.
Yeah, and when you it sounds like a great run, and I know you've given us the sweetener there towards the end where you've recently sold and moved on. But I'm interested a bit in that journey that you found a partner. Was your partner a sports? Were they into sports as well? Was there that sort of affinity?
Yes, my partner, his name's Brendan Pearson, was a Division I athlete. Played college basketball for Fordham University. Was an all-state basketball player in high school. So yeah, having another athlete, I think is a big deal in terms of learning discipline. Again, we talked about adversity, teamwork, all those leadership skills, all those things were important. And when we split up, he ended up having a very successful career as well. His business did very, very well. So I think having a sports background is really important. It's something I look for when I hired people. One of the guys that took over my business was a college athlete, and I think he learned a lot of lessons from sports. The other guy, even though he wasn't a sportsman, was very smart and very disciplined. You know, they have two different personalities, but they're both very successful in their own right too.
And how do you think, something that you look for in someone that you would hire as as you've grown that business? How do I
Well,
suppose the
well,
question is, yeah, how do you harness that? How do you harness that athletic edge into something that can work inside your business?
Well, I think once you own the business, you become more of a coach than an athlete. So I think it's important when you own your business to know what kind of a player you have. Do I have a fast player, a slow player, a smart player, a dumb player? Who fits into my business, and how do I utilize that within the concept of a team? Okay, where does every player fit in? And that's where I think it's more important when you're the owner to be a good coach than be a good player, if you will. Okay, you graduate from player to coach when you start your business, and you're looking for pieces to fit in. Okay, that complement each other. And the reason why I like sports people is just again the concept of teamwork. That they know they're part of a team. That if a player on your team is too selfish, the whole team is going to fail. I mean, you know that. So that was important to me. Somebody that can handle criticism, that's not too sensitive, a thicker skin. I think that helps.
I definitely agree. I think it does. It's especially on the criticism piece and that thicker skin. You
Yes.
talk about having to go through that adversity, but also that desire to be better, the desire to excel, which in, it's either innate or at least it's learned through most athletes as they go through their careers.
I always asked my employees where we could get better. And I wanted to have an open enough relationship with the people that worked in our office where they could come in and criticize our business in a positive way. Same with our clients, seeking feedback. I coached sports when I was done officiating. I coached baseball, and I would coach kids, and I would seek feedback from the kids. What do we need to do to make the team better? What do I need to do to be a better coach? Asking their parents if it was appropriate, knowing what parent to deal with, where we could get better, but always asking for feedback. And because you're trying to get to this place of perfection that you're never going to get to, but you keep striving to get there, and you end up having an excellent business for yourself. In my business, my employees came first. They were more important to me than the clients. I realized if my employees were taken care of, the clients would be taken care of. I learned that in baseball, how not to treat people because they don't treat their employees very well in sports. So at the top levels, they do obviously with all the money they make. But I learned how not to treat people, and I vowed I would not do that when I had a business. And I had employees that stayed with me for 20 to 30 years. So
Wonderful.
I guess they were happy.
Yeah, I'd like to think they were. Now, during that time, what's great about having you on the show is you can talk through the phases of now growing your business. And I'm interested to understand, was it, hey, boom, straight up and it stayed up? Because being in fin services, you must have gone through some difficult times.
Absolutely. At the beginning, the first move, the first employee is the hardest because you're starting your business by yourself. And then, hey, this is working out pretty cool. And then you realize there's not enough of you to go around. And that first employee you hire is a big deal because your pay goes down to hire that new person. And you really hope it works out. So, mistake number one was hiring the lowest cost employee and not having the right people and having to fire them, which is not easy, and then hiring better people at more money. And then it took a couple of years, but the business started to really succeed. And then the third, fourth, and fifth employees were much easier to hire. That was no problem. Then I was at a point where I thought the business had peaked. I became one of the top 15 advisors in our firm around the time of the terrorist attack in 2001. And I figured this was as good as it was going to get. And then when the 2008 financial crisis took place, my business actually grew by 400% after that. It went to a whole nother level. We went from being a small business to a medium to large size business. And that's when we became a multi-million dollar firm. I realized the strategies I was putting into place to prepare people for worst case scenarios really worked. And when the 2008 financial crisis, not only did all our clients stay, they really brought in many more people. And they're like, this guy knows what he's doing here. And business went to became the number one advisor in our firm. Again, that's using math for over a decade. And the prosperity was unimaginable. I feel like the luckiest guy in the world when all that took place. It was really pretty cool.
So and that isn't, congratulations for that. But what were you doing during this downturn, during this financial crisis for you to to win business, not go out of business?
They were actually very simple philosophies, and that was as far as people's finances were concerned. I made sure that anybody in retirement had no debt, they had no mortgage. I made sure people paid off all their debt when it was time to do so. I never said to a client, "Take on debt, give me the money." Because I'll make more money than whatever your interest payments are. During my 35 years in business, those words never passed my lips. That's not common in our industry where a lot of people want debt to be leveraged. It's okay in the beginning when you're starting a business. Once you start winning, then in my opinion, you pay it off so you're prepared for adverse consequences. And then from a retiree standpoint, I tried to make sure that everybody had more interest and dividends coming in than whatever their lifestyle was so that they can weather a downturn. So when 2008 took place, our clients, their assets went down, but their income did not go down. And they were able to weather that storm where a lot of other people were going into bankruptcy. There was all kinds of trouble. We weathered the storm and then we were able to go to another level. Our revenues went down, but none of our clients left us during 2008, and we picked up a lot of business. And I learned to almost embrace downturns because that's when money leaves other advisors. And even though your business goes down a little bit, at the end of the day, it goes way back up. It goes
Hmm.
way up, and that has worked very well in my view.
And it sounds like you had a strategy, or indeed, I'm going to say a belief that you stuck to
Yeah.
throughout all of that. And that conviction, that conviction helped your customers know what they wanted to do and or what you wanted to do and how you were going to help them.
My whole life was based on preparing for a worst case scenario. You think about it when I was in sport, What's the worst thing that can happen when you're in sports? That you get fired and you have to start a new career. Well, being prepared to do that and then having a career workout was very good. Preparing your finances for worst case scenarios and having a positive attitude in life are not incompatible concepts. Okay, you can have a positive outlook on life and think, well, what happens if the stock market goes down 30%? Am I prepared if that happened? And if I'm prepared if it goes up as well. And every situation is unique. But preparing yourself for worst case scenarios is a pretty good idea in my view. And we try to put that into practice to the extent that you can. To the extent that you can.
Yeah, again, I just think that's so interesting. Now, I want to go a little bit into those clients that you serve. Now, I know there's a whole plethora of clients, but I'm interested in those umpires, and the reason why is because so many of those listening, watching this show are athletes who either themselves are retired or planning retirement, and I'm interested in just
Right.
more sort of the mindset of the clients as they sort of come to you as practicing umpires, retiring umpires, retired. You know, how does that shift, and what sort of things do you look for?
Most people, what I've learned in business, when somebody comes to me for financial advice, they have one question: am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? Okay. Take my finances and make me okay. Most people aren't looking to get rich. If they're already rich, they want to stay rich. That's one thing. How do I stay rich? And preparing for worst case scenarios is a pretty big freaking deal in my view. If they're not yet rich, we're quantifying for them the piece, what they need to do to get from point A to point B in a very logical way. Okay, this is what you need to do so that you can achieve what I call financial independence, which is when the money from your investments is greater than what your lifestyle is. Once you've achieved that, once you've done that, you have financial independence. And we're just coming up with strategies to make sure that that stays as is. We're not trying to take rich people and make them triple their money. Okay. If I say that to somebody, I would say, is it worth taking on risk so that you have more money than you know what to do with when you're already in that situation right now? As an athlete, you never want to turn a win into a loss. Okay. If in baseball, if you're winning by 3 runs, for baseball fans out there, if it's the ninth inning and a team has a runner on third base, you're not playing the infield you're playing the infield back because you're willing to give up a run for the out so that you can win the game. Okay. In football, if you're winning by 20 points in the fourth quarter and you have the ball, you're going to run the ball and use the clock rather than try to run up the score. Yet in finances, all of a sudden, because of people's inherent greed, they feel they need to get richer, richer, richer. Okay. And they need to protect the downside. So just being able to answer the question with math, am I going to make it? Am I going to be okay? If you can do that for a client in my business, you're winning. Okay. And clients feel very comfortable knowing that they have strategies in place that they're going to be okay. That's it.
And so when you look then at an athlete compared to your average individual, do
Yes.
you see them as having those same needs, or do you recognize there's a difference in timing?
It resonates with athletes because when I can make that point to an athlete, I can almost see their body language switch when I get into their headspace and say, and I'll pick whatever sport they're in, by the way, to draw that analogy when I'm dealing with. Works very well with athletes and they play ball. You could just see them get focused and go, yes, sir, I'm going to do what you say. And because recommended to me, and they fall in right in line. With the non-athletes, if they're fans, they can get it, but the non-athletes, I have to get them on board. If you're a good advisor, which I think I am, you have to be able to take different personality types,
Mhm.
different, there's people in the world. You have the athlete, you have the widow, you have the kid that inherited money that needs to get slapped around every now and then so that they know how not to get themselves in trouble. Oftentimes, what I have challenges with is have somebody that's been very successful in business and then they retire and then they want to do something else. And they've had people kissing their butt for so long that when they go into a new field, I have to remind them that, you know, you don't want to put too much of your money at risk here and lose what you've already had. And I think because I'm an umpire, I can be assertive yet respectful with them and let them know just because you're successful in one thing doesn't mean you're going to be successful in something else. So let's make sure we don't blow the whole thing. There's a Major League Baseball player, Kurt Schilling, who was a pitcher, had a $50 million net worth and lost the whole thing in about 18 months, okay, by leveraging a business. And I thought he was a pretty smart player. He could go into business, but he didn't need to lose $50 million. That's insane, and that's what I'm cautioning people against.
Mm. And you mentioned earlier on this need for having a plan. I often call it a catastrophe plan. So, but having that financial view to say, okay, how do I, as you said, sort of protect that downside? When you then sit with someone, as those listening, watching this show, are thinking, all right, that works, that resonates. What's the next best thing for them to do to plan for that career after athletic performance?
Well, it depends. The first thing I would do for preparing for a post-athletic career is see what do you want, okay? Put it in writing. And I would also ask people. A lot of people are afraid to ask. If somebody wanted to go into my field, I probably have somebody once a month, a college student or somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey, if I want to be doing what you did someday, help me connect the dots." And I'll give you two examples in my own life where people achieve success, and that were two are my children right now. My daughter, okay, was thinking about going into government, and I advised her to get as many internships as possible. Okay, meet with as many people doing what you may want to be doing. And now she's the United States Department of Energy representative at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China. My middle child said he wanted to be a pilot. Okay, he was always playing those stupid video games on the computer with aviation, and we brought in pilots to sit with him and show him, if you want to be a pilot, this is what you need to do. And they showed him what being a pilot was all about. And he became a captain with Alaska Airlines by the time he was 32 years of age. So it depends what you want. It doesn't have to be financial success. You could be a nurse, a teacher, whatever it is. But I would ask people in the field that you think about going into, have lunch, go out for a drink with them, pick their brain, and then see if that's what you really want to be doing. Shadow them, then come up with a written plan, and then execute that plan. Okay, and don't think that you need to do it in 6 months. It might take a few years. And our generation today is very anti-delayed gratification. But if you put this work in and you're smart about the work, you can be disproportionately rewarded, in my view.
And that's great. So just making sure I'm getting that down. But you say talking to people is something definitely. I think I know a lot of athletes, a lot of individuals, certainly young individuals, struggle with that idea of reaching out to others. But you're talking, really advocating that reach out, have those conversations, do that, like you say, do the internships, these mini trials in some respects. Do you enjoy it? Don't you enjoy it? Get out, have a coffee, a tea, or something with individuals who can perhaps show you that day in the life or what it means to be in those types of roles.
100%. That people need to do that to find. There's a lot of people that think they want to do something, and then after they spend a day seeing it, they're like, "Boy, I'm sorry I went into this field."
So true.
All they would have had to do. And I found a lot of people. I'm in this country club circuit now where I'm dealing with a lot of success. I meet a lot of successful people, and every last one of them is willing to share what they learned. People are really, everybody has a favorite subject, and that's themselves. and they're willing to share their knowledge. If somebody came to me, I'm more than happy to sit with somebody and say, no, 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 don't. If you're doing that, I wouldn't do that. If I were you, I would do this. And you could save people years of time that they would have wasted pursuing something that would have never worked out. So I would take advantage of that.
Yeah. And one of the bits that you've emphasized a lot through this, and that's taken from your own lesson, is writing it down, seeing it on paper.
Yeah.
And listen, I'm a believer that writing it, drawing it, coloring it in is perhaps even more impactful than typing it up on a computer. But you really talk about this, write it down. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, I think it's important. I remember when I was into my business and you talked about weathering market downturns, and I had my business, I had the sales projected for the next couple of years, all my expenses, and then the bottom line profit. And just like you were saying, Ryan, what happens if the stock market goes down 30% and your income's tied into that? And 15% of the clients fire you because they blame you. What does that look like? And rather than thinking, what does that look like? I put it down in writing. Okay. I cut my sales down. I cut some clients out, and I looked, and when I looked at the bottom line, I'm like, that's not so bad. We could survive that. I'm okay with that. And rather than sitting worrying about it all the time, I knew the math on it. And I'm like, if that I hope it doesn't happen because I'd like to be making more money, but I know I can weather that storm. I know I can handle that. And so people that want to do a remodel on their house, they want a second home, whatever it is. If you do the math on things, and then when you look at it, go, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. Or then you do the math and go, yeah, I think that can work. Let's go for it. Because as an accountant, people came to me, again, because I combined accounting and wealth management, people would come to me with business ideas, all kinds of things. And I'm the type that likes to say yes. It's very easy to say no, don't do something. I try to find a way to yes. And I would sit with my clients and go over how the math would work. And then they'd look at me and go, nah, I don't think I want to do that. I didn't, all these 3 or 4 things that you're bringing up, I didn't realize that was part of the game. So I think I'm going to pass on that. And the decision becomes self-evident, if you will, by putting it in writing.
Yes, yeah, I think I agree with you as well. I like that visual nature and writing it down, and because the important bit that you say at the end there is then executing on a plan. And there's something that certainly in that athletic mind, it's that goal orientation. You've got a plan, it's written down. Let me go ahead and now execute on it, find out, and make it real.
If you think about it in sports, a good coach that talks about winning all the time and doesn't do anything about it is not a good coach. Most people that are successful have some sort of a process that works. And that's what you're looking for at the end of the day, a repeatable process that works for the most part. In golfers have a good pre-shot routine that they rely on under pressure. In your sport, there's things that you do that you rely on under pressure. When I umpired, I had a process calling balls and strikes that I relied on and was very successful under pressure. In business, I had processes for everything that evolve. Okay. So if I was meeting with a new client for the first time, there was a process on how to do meeting number 1. There was a process on how to deliver plans, a process on client communication that you're always trying to improve on. But that's what winners do. They have processes that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, Jack, it's been so fascinating just hearing your perspective in building the business, or coming from being an umpire, building a business. There's one last little bit that I'm really just keen on, and that is, as you became successful in your business, you spoke about becoming a coach, and that's how you ran that business, not being you didn't say manager, you didn't say leader of sorts. So describe how you learned to be a coach in that regard, and what that meant.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one thing that helped me is when I was coaching children. I coached kids for a long time, and I realized that very early on I could not assume anything, and that I had to talk to adults in a similar way as children, but showing them respect, not being demeaning to them, showing a lot of respect. So I learned how to coach kids and that translated well into coaching adults. I think a lot of business owners make mistakes in that they don't allow their employees to grow and thrive. So in my business, if I think about the two people taking over for me, when I was in my early 50s, I realized, wow, I had this great business, but now how do I get out of it? Okay, I have Oujo Wealth Strategies. It's just Oujo. It's kind of a star-based systems. How do I get out of this freaking thing someday? And I ended up coaching people in my office to take over, and I had to allow them to do meetings. I had to allow them to fail, okay, and make mistakes, realizing that in the long run we'd be better off. Now they're stars in their own right, and now they're coaching our employees, if you will, on how to get to the next level. Is allow people to do things. I mean, the most perfect example in all of American business is the McDonald's brothers, who thought they were the only ones capable of making the hamburgers until they were told that your business can be repeated. And they were like, who are we going to get to make these burgers? Teenagers? And they're like, yeah, that's what you're going to do. You're going to get people to come in and make the hamburgers. And they became a Dow 30 company. So realizing, letting go of work is, as the business prospers, letting go of a lot of things, hiring people smarter than you. Okay. It becomes a lot of fun because you realize you don't have to do a lot of the work and you can have a lot of the free time that you seek out.
So, how did you know it was time to exit the business, to sell the business?
I realized I was watching the progression of the people I had in my office. To be perfectly frank with you, I have the passion and desire right now, and I could still do it right now if I wanted to. But I saw the two guys I was mentoring really go to another level, and I saw them chomping at the bit. And I had made my finances were in really good shape, and I said to them when we got to 2024 and 2025. I said, you are now in a position to own the business, but I want you to do it for 2 years. Still going to be in my name, but I want you to run it as though it's yours. You have the power to hire and fire, make any decisions that you want, as long as they're reasonable. And let's see how things go. And at the end of 2 years, if that goes well, then you're going to take over the business under something that we mutually agreed to, which was a contingency sale where I get paid over a period of many years based on the success of the business. And everything worked to perfection. Quite frankly, the reason why I wrote the book, Too Smart to Be an Umpire, in 2025 is I was so bored. I thought the clients are definitely going to need me and need to talk to me. And nobody was calling me. They were calling them. And I had the time to write this book. So that'll tell you something. My last year in business, I had the time to write a book because the guys running the business were doing such a good job. And now that they own it outright, they're doing a really, really good job. And I'm very proud of Jason Gordon and Anthony Sandemerz. I'm very proud of the job that they're doing right now for our
I
clients.
love that. I think that's great, Jack. And I actually, I'm working with a few athletes who would probably love to just bend your ear and have a conversation with you as they embark upon their sort of wealth management strategies as well.
Sure. They can. Oujo is a very uncommon name, Oujo. So there's oujowealthstrategies.com and then too smart to be an umpire.com. There's a website for the book too. So I'm easy to find if somebody wanted to get a hold of me.
Absolutely great. I'm sure there are many people watching and listening who are going to be searching you and trying to reach out. Certainly, if you're open to it, to always have that virtual coffee, because this has been a fantastic 45 or so minutes for me.
Ryan, I really enjoyed speaking to you, and that's a sweet spot for me. Athletes transitioning into the business world, and absolutely with the things you learned in sports, people can do so well in the business world. They really can.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Listen, Jack, I just want to say again, thanks so much for taking time out of your day, bringing your perspective, sharing your story. I've really appreciated your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.